My name is Christopher. I have HSV2 down here. I want to talk today about how do you have sex with herpes, whether it's oral, whether it's genital, where it's just Scooby-Dooby-Doo, all these different questions about like people thinking that their entire sex life is over or that their sex life will dramatically change because they know they have herpes. And this is just the basics of how to have sex if you have herpes. First things first, let's go over this. Every human being is essentially been at risk or is still at risk of contracting or transmitting herpes, whether it's oral or genital, whether they know it or not. So, to give you some context, like I didn't go into the date with the girl I got it from thinking I was going to get herpes, but I did. So that's sort of the example of like, some people know they have it, some people don't know they have it, some people tell you, some people don't tell you, but we're all somewhat playing a game of Russian roulette. And the good news is that Russian roulette ends up killing you and herpes probably won't kill you. So at least we have that on our side. But I think that when you get diagnosed or when you even are told like, hey, you have oral herpes now, people's minds just go crazy because they think like, now that ignorance is not bliss and now that I'm aware, everything's going to change. And here's the thing. I'm just going to run through every possible scenario when it comes to type 1, type 2, oral, genital, all sorts of different situations. So HSV1 most commonly causes oral herpes here. Oral herpes and genital herpes could be transmitted without symptoms. I can't give you exact shedding rates and stuff, but just understand this as a concept. Herpes could be transmitted without symptoms, but it's not a guarantee all the time. Now, up here can be transmitted to someone's mouth. That's what we call, cold sores, oral herpes, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. That's very common. 66% of people have that. This up here can be transmitted to someone's genitals. Genital herpes can be type 1 if someone doesn't already have type 1 in either location. Now, when it comes to locations, if you have herpes here, your genitals themselves are not contagious. If you have herpes here, your mouth is not contagious. They have to be two separate infections to be both contagious. So with that being said, I can kiss you and there be no risk. And the same concept is like if someone only has oral herpes, penetration is no risk to you, but like you're probably going to do kissing before you do penetration. Anyways, live your life. So with that being said, if somebody has type 1 down here, you are not likely to contract it from them compared to type 2, which is already not likely. But type 1 down there sheds far less often, and because most people already have type 1, you won't be reinfected, typically, by someone who has type 1 down there. And hypothetically, like if you don't have type 1 at all and you give oral sex to someone that has type 1 down there, because it sheds so infrequently, transmission is pretty low in that situation. So that's basically covering the type 1 scenario. Let's go on to type 2. Now, type 2 is rarely here, although no one is swabbing their cold sores to kind of find out what type it is. But we're just going to assume, from a proactive standpoint, that people mostly have type 2 down here. Now, type 2 down there can be transmitted without symptoms. Same as up here. And in terms of shedding, you don't really know when that is, but this is essentially the baseline reality of life. Is that avoid sex during outbreaks if you have it up here, or kissing, that sort of thing. Just base your life around interacting with human beings when you or them don't have outbreaks. Now, type 2 is not really commonly passed up here, so you can pretty much give someone oral sex if they have type 2, and be close to 0% chance of a risk there. But nothing is ever 0. Keep that in mind, except for my self-esteem. Anyways, let's get back on track. So let's talk about protection. Herpes could be transmitted with the use of protection. I'm not saying it's the same risk as not using protection. Obviously, protection helps, but for those who say, you should have just wrapped up, bro, there are situations where you can get herpes with a condom. And the other side of the coin, too, is like, people who get genital HSV1, typically, whether you're male or female, aren't using protection. I've never seen a dental dam. People don't usually use condoms for oral sex for guys. So good luck, I guess, avoiding genital HSV1 in a regular sexual situation, because a lot of people are just not using condoms in that specific situation, or they lack the knowledge that type 1 can be genital. So keep that in mind. Condoms definitely help. Transmission rate decretion 96% for male to female and 65% for female to male with the use of condoms. Next thing, you may feel like you could never have sex again, and that's just because you now know you have this. The same risks applied before you knew you had herpes, you just never thought about them. And it actually is a good thing now that you are concerned, because that means you care about your partner. You're going to be more careful if you have this. You're going to be looking out for outbreaks. You're going to be taking precautions. You're going to be saying, I feel some weird symptoms down there. Maybe we should hold off. So I don't want to sound like a pick me, but the people who know they have herpes and are aware of their outbreaks are safer to be with than people who don't know they have herpes and have it. Keep that in mind. If you kind of reject someone because you are scared of contracting herpes from them, what's to say that the next person or the second, third person doesn't have herpes, doesn't tell you, or doesn't have herpes, doesn't know, that sort of situation. I didn't walk into the situation with the girl I got it from thinking, oh, I'm going to get herpes. It was oblivious to me, and maybe it was oblivious to her, but I still contracted it. Now, with that being said, let's talk about precautions. So in addition to condoms, antivirals can help decrease the risk of transmission if you take them daily. So valacyclovir once per day or acyclovir twice per day. This is going to decrease the risk of transmission by decreasing the amount of viral shedding. So less shedding, less opportunity for there to be a chance of transmission, therefore less risk of transmission. People who have type 1 here or there typically don't take antivirals daily because the shedding rate is already so low and it's not really going to make a significant difference. And most people don't take like antivirals at all for oral herpes. So essentially the only people who would want to take antivirals daily would be HSV2 genitally. And if you want to do that for the psychological boost or the decreased shedding boost or whatever, try it out. So maybe you don't want to use condoms, but you want to use daily antivirals, or maybe you want to do no antivirals, condoms. And I'll also say this, if you don't take any precautions other than just like avoiding sex during an outbreak, transmission is not guaranteed. The chance is basically the baseline, which is about 10 couples out of 100 on a yearly basis, but you don't just automatically give someone herpes by touching them with no precautions and stuff like that. I think it's so blown out of proportion now that people are, changing their entire kitchen utensils if someone has genital herpes, or they're, not letting them use the same bathroom. I just find there to be such ridiculous scenarios when it comes to avoiding getting genital herpes. I don't know if it's media or if it's something else, but there is some sources out there that are just, I don't have words for it. Someone is making up such nonsense about herpes transmission that it's no wonder people are running around fearing this. But the reality is, herpes is going around, chickenpox was going around, cold sores was going around. Every human being is essentially at risk of contracting herpes. Herpes is a human virus. Herpes is common. It doesn't change your worth. Other people change your worth. But guess what? If you believe that you're worth more than someone else's opinion of you, their opinion can never impact you. Love you, miss you, hope you're doing well. Extra help in the description box. Check out the free disclosure templates. See you in the next video.